So allow yourself to come into the present moment. And when you do that, when you lose the obsession of this time-based thinking, which is actually the movement of the ego, desire and fear is the movement of the ego, is the dynamic aspect of the ego, as opposed to the structural aspect. It's the movement of the ego. Like a car has a movement. You can move backwards, forwards, turn left, turn right. Yeah, that's the movement of a car. But the car also has a structure, doesn't it? It's got maybe doors and windows and wheels. Maybe it's got 4 wheels and 4 doors and a certain number of windows. And that's the structure of the car. And then there's the movement of the car. So this desire and fear is the movement of the ego. When this ego stops moving, it's unlike a car. It ceases to exist. So in this way, the ego is like a wave. You know, a wave is a movement of water. And when the wave stops moving, it ceases to exist as a wave. The wave can only exist in motion. And when the wave stops moving, we no longer perceive a wave. In the same way, when the ego stops, this time-based thinking stops, and we come into the present moment. Now, when we come into why am I talking about this? I said, let me trace you back what I've been saying so far. I said, one of the most important things we have to do is intuit that we are the divine. That's what I'm coming to in this. And I said, if you let go of time-based thinking, you come into the present moment. And when you lose the obsession of this fetish or focus, unhealthy focus, unbalanced focus on thinking on one part of your experience, then the whole of your experience comes into focus and wisdom is much more likely to arise. And intuition is much more likely to arise. In this kind of more fluid, open state, where the ego is not so functional, or at least the dynamic aspect of the ego is not so functional, we can start to intuit and feel, yes, I am vast. I am more than this, or actually how it's often felt, because the structural aspects of the ego has not been touched so far. I'll explain what I mean by this in a second. But because the ego structure hasn't been affected, you'll often interpret it as life could be so much better than this. Somehow, life shouldn't be like this. Life should be so much better. There's something more. Life doesn't have to be just like this. It could be, somehow I know, I have a feeling inside, life should be so much better than this. This is how this same intuition of being divine is often felt in your heart. It's felt that way because you take yourself to be body-mind, living in a real world, right? That's the structure of the ego. We're coming to the structural aspect of the ego now. So when the functional aspect of the ego, the dynamic aspect, starts to settle down, this time-based thinking starts to settle down, this intuition that I am divine comes in. But it's wordless. It's not in thought. So when it comes in, it's translated by the human mind through the structure of the ego. The structure of the ego is, the essential structure of the ego is this. It's the belief I'm a body-mind. The belief I'm the body-mind is the structure of the ego. So in the same way a car has a structure, once you've assembled a car with wheels and doors and the metal chassis body and all that kind of stuff, then it can move, right? Before you assemble a car, it can't move as a car. So only once this root idea, I'm a body-mind, is formed, this is the structure of the ego, then the ego can move I want this, I want that. I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that. And remember, desire and fear are the same. You may feel, for any particular desire or fear, you may feel it more as desire, or you may feel it more as fear. Actually, just as a slight digression, one very powerful technique, if you're trying to cope with desire, is to say, well, what am I afraid of? What's the fear that's there? Maybe a subtle fear, or maybe a not so subtle fear. And if you're having issue with fear, you can say to yourself, well, what's the desire there? What desire is there? And just try that. If you ever struggled with desire or fear, or addictions, or anxiety, just try that. It might not solve the whole issue, but it can loosen it up. So just play with that as well. What I was saying is that when our mind basically becomes calmer, this movement of ego and this obsession with the past and the future, desire, fear, memory, and projecting. So what happens with desire is that we remember something that's happened, a pleasant or unpleasant experience, and then we project, which means we imagine a future scenario. So if I had a good experience eating cake, I now use that memory and project or imagine, oh, I could eat cake in 10 minutes time. And it felt really good. So I can now imagine me eating cake and feeling really good in 10 minutes. I want that. And you start to chase this projected future. You see? Your mind has actually imagined eating chocolate cake in the future. And now you want it because that was a positive experience. Or if it was a negative experience, you say, I don't want that to happen. And you'll try and take steps to stop that happening. This is a past future based thinking, based on pleasure, pain. When that drops away, we start to intuit our divine nature. But because it's only the dynamic aspect or the functional aspect of the ego that's ceased, that allows this intuition to come in. If we're obsessed with thinking about the past and future, that reinforces our insecurity, our sense of lack. Almost all of this desire, fear, is based upon a sense of lack. Not knowing the self. Not knowing what we really are. When we know what we really are, there's no sense of lack. So this egoic desire and fear drop away. Addictive tendencies, addictive processes, anxiety, neuroticism starts to fall away, usually over some time. We start to intuit something special when this thinking goes. Because we still think, I'm the body mind, I live in a world, this world is real. Remember, the structure of the ego is the belief I'm the body mind. Yeah? The structure of the ego is the belief I'm the body mind. And when you believe you're a body mind, you also believe that you're living inside a world. And if you believe that I'm the body mind, you're basically saying, I believe I'm the body mind and I, the body mind, am real. And therefore you project that reality onto the world as well. I believe I, the body mind, am real, and I believe the world is real. And I can now look for happiness in the world, and I can struggle to avoid unhappiness in the world. I can strive for security in the world, because you don't know what you are. You've lost contact with what you are. Now, there are some exceptions where we actually concentrate on something beautiful and divine in order to stop ourselves going, to stop that dynamic movement of the ego. And by the way, these two aspects of ignorance, the dynamic or functional aspect on one hand, and the structural aspect on the other hand, they directly correlate with the two types of practice or teaching: purification and insight or knowledge, wisdom. Can you see that? Can you see that? The purification aspect of the teaching deals with the dynamic aspect of the ego, the movement. Think of the ego as a car. The car's moving all over the place. The ego is moving all over the place, suffering, causing havoc, getting confused, sometimes feeling happy, sometimes feeling confused, sometimes suffering, pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain. This is the suffering of the ego. The car moving around the place. The purification teachings just get the car to slow down and become still. But they don't destroy the car, they don't attack the structure. The wisdom teachings start to dismantle the structure of the car. They take the wheels off, they take the doors off, they break it all down until there's nothing left. So the purification teachings slow the mind down, so we come out of this time-based thinking, pleasure, pain, attraction, aversion, right? The knowledge-based teachings, the higher teachings, we say, don't forget, higher doesn't mean better. You need them both. You need them both. The knowledge teachings say, oh, look, you are not the body mind. You are the self. And that destroys the structure, the ego, which is this belief on the body mind. Do you see? This is why if the car's moving all over the place, you can't dismantle it. In the same way, if the ego is moving all over the place, trapped by desire and fear, entrapped in this movement, constant movement of attraction and aversion. And by the way, this movement of attraction and aversion is rajas and tamas as well. So when you're predominantly in the desire mode, in a positive way, that's rajas. When you're predominantly in a fear mode, that's tamas. You see, the movements of the ego. And when that movement, rajas tamas stops, what's that? That's sattva. That's peace. So the aim of the purification teachings is to become peaceful, to stop the movement of this ego car. You see. And then once the ego has become still, then we can start to dismantle it. But if the ego starts to move again, it reforms itself fully. This kind of ego car, if you dismantle it, once it starts moving, it reassembles itself fully, like some kind of like transformer, some kind of self-manufacturing robot that just materializes itself again and it's off, causing trouble again. This is why the knowledge teachings don't take root until the mind is fairly sattvic. Now, in reality, for most people, as the wisdom grows, they'll become calmer. And as they become calmer or more sattvic, the wisdom teachings will penetrate deeper. So they both have a mutual effect.